Dr. V. Chandrasekhar is working as lecturer in philosophy in the Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda College since 1996. He has been awarded the degree of PhD by the University of Madras for his work in the area yoga and analytical psychology. He has been teaching Indian philosophy, Western philosophy, and recent European philosophy for undergraduate and postgraduate students. He has participated in many seminars and presented papers in a variety of topics. He has also reviewed 2 books in ethics and Indian culture published by the Tamil Nadu Textbook Society for Plus 2 course.
Welcome to UGC series of lectures in philosophy, especially Greek philosophy. Today we have 2 students here with me. Let me introduce them to you. Mr. Vijay Sarathi.
Hi.
And Ms. Archana.
Hi.
So far we have been dealing with the genesis of philosophy, especially in the Greece, wherein we had moved into the area which is referred to as transition from metaphysics to positive science. In this we had seen the philosophies of Xenophanes, Parmenides and Empedocles. Today we will be dealing with another philosopher called Anaxagoras, who is slightly elder to Empedocles. He too has spoken philosophy in the sense of identifying the nature of the ultimate. We saw in the Milesian school, we saw how people had tried to identify what the reality is, but then with respect to Parmenides and others, they were trying to identify or talk about what the nature of the reality is. In the previous class, when we discussed about Empedocles, we spoke of 4 elements that Empedocles talk of, namely earth, water, fire and air. He says that since there is a multitude of things in the world, this cannot have come from one object, which was the case with respect to Milesians. Similarly, Anaxagoras is also going to talk in the sense that the plurality of the world requires that the ultimate also is plural and not one. In this regard, he, I would say, follows the Milesian thought. We will see who this Anaxagoras is and how he starts his philosophy. Anaxagoras is the first philosopher who introduced a spiritual principle which gives life, matter and form. He laid down his doctrine in a prose work on nature, written in the Ionian dialect, of which fragments are not fully available. Anaxagoras, we can say, is the first philosopher who transplanted philosophy into Athens. Of course, Athens is very much known for the philosophy of Socrates, but prior to him it was Anaxagoras with whom philosophy started to have its moorings in Athens. So, we say that he can be the first philosopher to have used, to have spoken about philosophy in Athens. And of course, as is the case with other Greek thinkers, earlier Greek thinkers, he has also written his ideas in a book, in a work called On Nature, titled On Nature. Of course, the fragments are not available to us right now. This I have already told in my previous classes, namely that whatever we know about the pre-Socratics is only through the works of Plato and Aristotle and people who came after them. So, some of them are not available, some of the works of these people are available, but only in fragments, not much is available. This person is born at Clazomene in a noble family. Actually, Clazomene, I will be showing a map, it comes in the Ionian coast. It is a place where Anaxagoras is born. He was born in a noble family and he was born in a very wealthy family also, but he abandoned wealth in pursuit of knowledge and reached Athens. Of course, this point I have told earlier, the first philosopher to have transplanted philosophy to Athens, where it flourished for 1000 years. Now, coming back to this slide, I would like to tell you one thing. Philosophy thrived in Athens for more than 1000 years, but it started, I should say, with the philosophy of Anaxagoras. And how? This man was born in Clazomene. From there, he shunned away from his riches. He was born in a very rich family, but he left out all the riches and came to Athens and started doing philosophy. Of course, this is where he met another person called Pericles, a very good statesman, very famous statesman, and the people, some of them rejected him because of his association with Pericles, and therefore, he had to flee Athens. We will see later now. See, this is the place called Clazomene. You know, as I told you earlier in one of the classes, the whole place is called Greece in the earlier areas. Was born in Clazomene and Athens is here. So, now having been born here, after he came away from his family and settled in Athens, and from Athens when he had to leave the place, he went to Lampsacus. This is the place. And why did he have to do that? Here Anaxagoras never involved himself in politics, but his friendship with Pericles was enough for the faction opposed to Pericles to conspire against him. He was charged with atheism. Who is this Pericles? Pericles was a leading statesman of Athens and an able general, a distinguished orator. It was Pericles who raised Athens to be an empire state. He reduced the maritime allies who had elected Athens to be their leader in the war against Persia to the position of subjects. He even maintained that they had no claim to inquire what was done with the money paid by them for the military services, which was spent in adoring Athens with splendid works of art. Now, you know who this Pericles is. Of course, he had a lot of detractors, because of which Anaxagoras was also targeted by them. Of course, Anaxagoras did not enter into politics directly, but only because of his association with Pericles, he had a lot of detractors and they charged him with atheism. Now, I must tell you one thing. In those days, whenever somebody they conspired against others, the easy way for them was to talk that this person was atheistic. And how did they do that? We will see now. Their objection was mainly because of his views on sun and moon. Sun, according to him, was a red hot stone and moon was made of earth, he said. As I told you earlier, it was easy for people to charge somebody when he talks against religion. Earlier on, including in fact later on also, Plato and Aristotle held sun and moon to be divine entities, but it was Anaxagoras who said for the first time that sun was a red hot stone. Imagine how people would have reacted when he said like this, because they adored sun as God, but it was here Anaxagoras who said that sun is nothing but a red hot stone. And what about moon? Moon is nothing but a part of the earth, has been formed out of earth and reflects the sun. This was enough for the religionists to stamp him to be an atheist. But imagine one thing from our angle. Today we say that moon is something that reflects the light of the sun. This was originally brought out by Anaxagoras 500 years before Christ. He said clearly that moon is nothing but an object which has come out of earth and reflects the light of the sun. This is what we believe now, but was told by Anaxagoras some time back, for which he was criticized and named as being atheistic. So, therefore, he had to flee Athens, and this is when he went to Lampsacus. Anaxagoras is held to be a follower of Anaximenes. Scholars say that he was attempting to revive the Milesian way of thought in the post-Parmenidean period. I must say, Anaxagoras has been thought to have been a follower of the philosophy of Anaximenes. Anaximenes we all know from Miletus, who held that air is the ultimate source of the whole world of objects. Anaxagoras' philosophy also toes the line of Anaximenes, and because of that scholars feel that Anaxagoras follows Anaximenes' philosophy. And not only that, scholars also feel that he was trying to establish the Milesian way of thought in the post-Parmenidean period.
Sir, sorry for the interruption. I have a doubt, sir. How does Anaxagoras revive the Milesian way of thinking in post-Parmenidean period?
It was in Miletus philosophers like Thales, Anaximander and Anaximenes who established that there must be some ultimate reality behind the world of objects. Some such thing Anaxagoras is also planning to bring about. Only thing, after 100 years after the Milesian philosophers, especially after the period of Parmenides, because it was at the period of Parmenides philosophy tried to understand what the nature of reality is. Instead of saying what the reality is, they tried to understand what the nature of reality is. But then here Anaxagoras tries to go back to the Milesian way of understanding what this reality is. But then one thing, the Milesian philosophers tried to understand reality as one. If it was Thales, he said water is the ultimate reality. If it is Anaximander, he said that some indeterminate matter is the ultimate reality, and Anaximenes said that air is the ultimate reality. In fact, Anaximenes gives reason for accepting air to be the ultimate reality, which he says there are two principles governing air, namely condensation and rarefaction, which governs the whole universe, and therefore he comes to the conclusion that air is the ultimate principle. But now the world has a multitude of objects in it. If we have to accept all these things, then the cause of that also should be many and not one. It was in this regard that Anaximenes also spoke about, but he said that everything is governed by either rarefaction or condensation, and he could explain through that. But now at the time of the transition from metaphysics to positive science, Anaxagoras felt the need to understand, to talk about many realities, and hence he brings about the realities as to be earth, water, fire, even for that matter gold, wood, everything that exists in the world as real, ultimately real. Here I would say that he toes the line of Empedocles, for the simple reason Empedocles also believed in a variety of existences, but reduced them to four ultimate principles, or they call it as element, or he called it as the roots, namely earth, water, fire, air. Similar to that, Anaxagoras also talks of, but only thing is whatever exists in the world he takes them to be ultimate. That is what we will see in the next slide. The basic belief of Anaxagoras: if the world with all its diversities is to be explained, then we must accept a original plurality. Therefore, Anaxagoras admitted a state of the world in which all things were together, infinite both in quantity and smallness. An important view that emanates from the previous discussion is that the original mass was infinitely divisible, and that every part of it is contained in everything else, that matter takes in the properties of whatever predominates in the mixture. What does this mean? If we are going to have only one substance as the ultimate and everything else to have come from that, we need to explain how. This is the problem which Thales, Anaximander and Anaximenes also had, but Thales said that water is found everywhere, therefore he could talk of only one ultimate principle as water. Anaximander spoke of an indeterminate matter which encompasses everything, therefore it was enough for him to talk like that. But Anaximenes felt the need, therefore he brought in air with the two principles. But now here Anaxagoras, following Empedocles, has got this problem, and he tries to solve it by explaining it with respect to plurality of elements. The world has got a multitude of things. This if this has to be accepted or explained, then we need to have an ultimate principle which also is multitude in nature, and the best part is everything has got everything else in it. This is what he is trying to say, and that is where he brings in his idea that matter takes in the property of whatever is existing. So, therefore, whatever is existing, he says, has got the other stuff in it, be it earth, water, fire, air, which was not the case with respect to Milesians, because for Thales it was only water, for Anaximander it was matter, but encompassing every other thing. For Anaximenes it was air, but here there are a multitude of objects which has got the particles of every other substance. This I have told earlier, follows Empedocles and the atomists in maintaining that matter is uncreated and indestructible, and that all becoming or change can be accounted for by the mixing and unmixing of the component parts. Now, though Anaxagoras was a follower of Anaximenes, he was also influenced by the thought of Empedocles and that of the atomists. For the simple reason, we all know when we are dealing with Parmenides' thought, I said Parmenides spoke of only one ultimate and he called it as a being. But this being he talked of in the sense of it occupying space, it being indeterminate in shape, things like that. So, as a result, some of the philosophers, especially people like Anaxagoras, Empedocles and even the atomists like Democritus, they tried to bring out the materialistic aspect of the Parmenides' thought. This is what we saw a couple of classes ago. Anaxagoras also spoke in line with Empedocles and atomists to say that reality is that which is. Only thing is, it has not been created and it does not go into nothingness. Instead, it keeps changing, it keeps becoming. It is actually, in the case of Parmenides, it was being as the reality, but in the case of Empedocles and the atomists, the reality is that which is becoming. In the case of Parmenides, it was that which is, but here it is that which is becoming. Anaxagoras also believed that reality is that which is becoming, and how? In order to do that, he says whatever has been existing, there is a case of mixing and unmixing, coming together and decomposing. He uses the word commixture and decomposition. What is it? To him, the world ultimate principle is an undifferentiated mass, wherein everything is existing, be it gold, hair, bone, wood, earth, water, fire, air, everything is existing in that undifferentiated mass, but the only thing is everything is existing together, in the sense that if you take up, for example, if I will just give a small example, if you take a cup of coffee, where can you find the sugar? The sugar is everywhere, sugar, coffee powder, milk, it is just permeating one another. Similarly, the undifferentiated mass, the reality, has got every element within it, but when they unmix, that is when they separate, the like particles come together. That is how he brings in his cosmology. The like particles come together, and as a result gold is formed, wood is formed, air is formed, water is formed. But the only difference is this is what we will be seeing later also, namely the ultimate principle has got infinite divisions, it can be it is divisible infinitesimally. Therefore, the mixing has got a very long way, and hence unmixing has also to take a very long way. Therefore, though we say that we have independent objects like gold, bone, etc., still everything is present in every other object. The only thing is something is predominating. Therefore, that which is predominating has been given the name for that particular object. This is how Anaxagoras is explaining, and that is what we call it as a mixing and unmixing.
Sir, how far is the comparison made?
The similarity between Anaxagoras and the atomists or Empedocles should not be extended. Anaxagoras does not conclude like them. Instead, he considered all kinds of matter as equally ultimate: gold, bone, hair, earth, water, wood, etc. That is, though we try to compare the philosophy of Anaxagoras with that of the atomists and Empedocles, one thing we must be clear. With respect to Empedocles, it was the four ultimate roots, namely earth, water, fire, air. With respect to the atomists, it was the atoms, which are smallest particles. But with respect to Anaxagoras, this is where he deviates. Though he followed Empedocles and atomists to identify ultimate principle to be plural, still he goes further than the atomists and Empedocles to bring in everything that is existing in the world. That is what he saw, namely gold, bone, hair, earth, water, air, etc., even wood for that matter. And another difference, atomists hold matter to be divisible into its smallest particles, but Anaxagoras advocated that matter is infinitely divisible. That is, world formation is through unmixing of the undifferentiated stuff. Now, there is one more difference between atomists and Anaxagoras. Namely, atomists believe that the world is divisible, and to the extent that we come to some ultimate substances which are indivisible, that they call it as the final case of divisibility, which they call as smallest particles. But then Anaxagoras goes further. He says this division takes place continuously. Therefore, we do not know when it started and we do not know when it is going to complete. Therefore, the world process is a continuation and it keeps moving on, and that is why he says the ultimate stuff is something which is encompassing everything, where we do not know what is what, but when they move away from each other, everything is formed. That is what this is explaining here. This is that thing I was telling earlier, commixture and decomposition. About the word formation, he uses these two terms, commixture and decomposition. That is, world formation is through unmixing of the mass, wherein the matter comes together with like matter, gold with gold particles, wood particle with wood particles. Since matter is infinitely small, mixing is complete, and hence unmixing takes a lot of time. This I told you earlier. That is, we are talking of the ultimate substance which is infinitesimally and also great, wherein the mixing of this has taken ages. Therefore, the unmixing also should take ages. Therefore, we can't say when it started and when it is going to end. That is what is given here. So, it will take a lot of time. So, only one thing can be said, namely gold becomes a matter in which gold predominates. Everything is called that of which it has most in it. So, only one thing can be said, when the like matter is separated to form its own matter, what happens is it has got the matter of every other stuff. Like for example, gold will have parts of wood, parts of other particles, etc. Still, the particles of gold predominate, and hence we name it as gold. Same is the case with respect to wood, air, water, everything. Therefore, everything is found in everything. In fact, while dealing with Empedocles, I was talking of the 4 elements being present in everything, wherein I also explained Empedocles' conception of perception, where he says though it is I that perceives the object, he says that the I has got earth element, air element, fire element, and the earth element in air perceives the earth, the air element in air perceives air. This is how Empedocles analyzes the theory of perception. Something similar to that, Anaxagoras also says that there are so many plurality of things which has got its ultimate areas in this. If the world is nothing but the coming together of all the particles, the different kinds of particles, wherein a particular object is named with the predominance of the particular particles, how does it take place? How does the mixing and unmixing take place? Now, we all know that these things are not conscious. If I am going to place 2 objects, namely 2 blocks of wood on the table, it is going to remain where it is. If at all the 2 blocks have to come together, somebody has to bring them together. Similarly, if there is wood, air, water, gold, bone, etc., how are they going to mix? How are they going to unmix? Should there not be some agent to mix it, to bring them together? Here, this is where Anaxagoras differs from the atomists, when he says that there is an intelligent principle, and he calls it nous, N-O-U-S, nous. Have it here, the cause for mixing and unmixing. Anaxagoras introduces a principle new in philosophy, namely nous, which is referred to as mind or intelligence. That is, if at all 2 things have to come together, then there is an intelligent agent which is responsible for bringing it together. you all know that an automobile vehicle has got the ability to move because of the presence of carburetor, engine, everything else, whatever is required, axle and other things. But then a conscious driver is required to maneuver the vehicle to move. Similarly, though there are a variety of objects, since these objects are since these particles are dead and motionless, there is a intelligent principle required for it. This was brought out by Anaxagoras, and this also is the first time that intelligent principle is required for mixing and unmixing of the various multitude of things. We will now summarize what we have done so far, and then I will also give you some model questions for this class. It should be Anaxagoras seems to be the first philosopher to have spoken philosophy in Athens. He says universe is composed of a variety of stuffs having the share of every other stuff. World formation takes place by the unmixing of the ultimate mass, wherein like matter comes together with like matter. Only an intelligent principle can govern the order in the universe. Intelligent force behind this world formation is nous. Model questions. Evaluate the cosmology of Anaxagoras. How does Anaxagoras characterize the nous? Is the theory of Anaxagoras similar to that of Empedocles and the atomists? Discuss. Students, I think with this we will come to a close for the day. However, there is something more with respect to this particular philosopher, that is very simple, and again just like in Parmenides, we are going to see whether Anaxagoras' philosophy is materialistic or immaterialistic. This will form part of my next lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
sir.